All right. So we're back talking about bats. I like bats. I don't really like rabbits. When I lived on a farm up in Canada, a rabbit bit my finger off, and that was relatively unpleasant. So don't like rabbits, but bats are cool. So bats belong to this group called Chiroptera, and they are the only mammal with powered flight. Now, of course, you might hear of like flying squirrels and stuff, and they actually are gliders, not flyers. These are the only group that truly flies. Now, their wing is structured a little bit different from other flying organisms, like those pterosaurs or birds. Their wing is suspended on, it's basically a membrane that goes between all the different finger bones. So here's his arm, there's his hand, there's the thumb, and then there you can see the different finger bones supporting the bat's wing. And these guys first show up in the early Eocene or maybe the Paleocene. Not quite positive about exactly the timing of that, but definitely by the early Eocene. And they can live in environments all the way from the tropical to temperate locations, not the Arctic. They are most abundant, though, in the tropics. They seem to tend to like warmer climates. There are basically three groups of bats. You have insect-eating bats, you have the vampire bats that do genuinely suck the blood of other organisms as their nutrient source. Usually not people, it's usually things like cattle. And then there's the nectar and fruit-eating bats. So there we see a insect-eating bat homing in on this moth. I really love bats because they're just like so ugly that they are damn cute. That is a vampire bat, and you can see that he's got the little teeth for making a little incision in the skin, and then he'll just lick up the blood that comes out. And that's his nice little vampire teeth there. But of course my favorite ones are the fruit-eating bats, like these flying foxes. And they just look so adorable sharing a watermelon together. They're big too. Flying foxes can get to be about like yay big, and just adorable little fuzzballs. All right, let's talk about flesh-eating mammals. And I'm not calling them carnivores because Carnivora is an actual group of mammals, and not all meat-eating mammals belong to the group Carnivora. Now, the earliest placental flesh-eating mammal is in the late Cretaceous. And we get the creodonts. And Creodonta is this group of flesh-eating mammals that shows up in the late Cretaceous and exists into the Miocene. Now, compared to other mammals, these guys have a relatively small brain and kind of short legs. This is a typical creodont. This is called Hyenodon, and you can see it's got kind of a little brain case back here, and his legs look sort of squat. And there you can see the size some of these Hyenodons came in. There are some that were quite big, you can see, but there are also ones that were smaller. So these guys, depending on the species, did vary in size. I like to bring this one up too because this guy's got one of the best names as far as like organisms go. He is called Sarcastodon. And that's what Sarcastodon, how big he would have been. And anyway, I just like the name. So our earliest placental flesh-eating animals are these creodonts. But then we get the group Carnivora, which are the meat-eating mammals that we have today. And these guys really diversify in the Eocene. And we end up with two major groups of these carnivores. There's Canoidea, which includes all the dog-like things, so dogs, raccoons, bears, seals, sea lions, walruses, and weasels. And then there's the Feloidea, which are all the cat related groups, including cats, civets, mongooses, and interestingly, hyenas. And here you can see the kind of the family tree of our meat-eating mammals. And so there's our creodonts, and there you can see the hyenodonts. They live into the Miocene. But here's our carnivore group. Back in the Eocene, they diversify into the dog-like group over here and the cat-like group over here. Well, if we're going to have meat-eating organisms, there's got to be some prey animals for them. So let's look at some of the herbivorous animals that would have been inhabiting the Cenozoic landscape. I'm going to start with ungulates. Ungulates are animals with hooves. And by the time we get to the late Paleocene, these things are abundant and widespread. And we have two main groups to these. We have the perissodactyls, which have uneven toes, basically 1 or 3 toes. Or we have the artiodactyls, which have an even number of toes, 2 or 4. And we're going to start with the perissodactyls. And the foot axis goes through the middle toe. So that's basically the center of weight that they're going to be putting on is on that middle toe. And they're digitigrade, which means they actually walk on their toes. So if, instead of their foot being down like this, it would be, on the fingers or toe part, and that's digitigrade. And a great example of this is the horse. The horse evolves in the Eocene. In fact, the Eocene, let me take this back. The Paleocene is defined as the time period where the dinosaurs are gone but the horses haven't yet shown up. So the Eocene really is marked by the appearance of horses. Now the earliest horses were browsers, and they were small, so they're like the size of a house cat, and they did not have high crown teeth, and this has to do with this browsing thing. So a browser sort of is one of these herbivores that goes through a forested area and it's eating the nice tender leaves and things. And so it didn't need high crown teeth because it's eating nice soft vegetation. Now, as we go through from the Eocene to the present, the horses grow bigger. They get bigger, they get taller with longer legs, bigger heart and lungs. Their teeth get a higher crown on them, and their toes start disappearing. So they used to have a bunch of toes, and now they basically have one hoof. And this all happens as the grasslands expand. Now, the modern horse appears in the Pliocene in North America. So horses are actually a North American native. And their range expanded in the Pleistocene, and they went over the Bering Land Bridge and went to inhabit like Asia and stuff, and then they actually went extinct in North America. But let's take a look at their evolution and why this happened. So this is the evolution of the horse, or Evolución del Caballo. And here's our earliest cat-sized horse. There you can see its toes and its tooth. And here's our modern horse. Single toe, much bigger high crown teeth. This happens in response to the expansion of those prairie grasslands. So when we had all kinds of forests covering North America, it was good to be a little browser because you can eat all those nice soft leaves and things in the forest. And if a predator comes by and you're small, you have an easy time finding some place to go hide. But as the forests go away and the grasslands expand, and this happened because of changes in climate. We had to remember that cooling event happening throughout the Cenozoic. As this climate changes and those grasslands expand, Well, now the horses are going to have to eat grasses, and grasses are tougher to chew because many grasses actually have a little bit of silica in them that's going to wear down their teeth, so they need bigger, high-crowned teeth against that wear of chewing on those grasses. And the horses grow bigger because now there's not really good places for little things to hide from predators. The better strategy to survive is to run from the predators. So we see this selective pressure of evolution placed on the horses that they have to, the characteristics of the different teeth and the bigger body are selected for as the environment changes. So the horses get bigger, longer legs, bigger lungs, bigger hearts, so they can outrun the predators, and they get those bigger teeth so they can eat those prairie grasses. Now, another perissodactyl is a tapir, the national animal of Belize. And tapir have 4 front toes, 3 back toes. They show up in the Oligocene, and they still exist today. They're a browser in forests, and this is what they look like. They're kind of cool, and they have this almost sort of prehensile nose sort of thing. And that is me petting a very happy tapir back there. Rhinoceroses, rhinoceri, a rhinoceros would also belong to this group. The earliest ones that appear are about the size of a tapir, which means, you know, kind of down like this. They show up in the Eocene, and in the Oligocene they grew really, really big. In fact, we got the largest land mammal was a giant hornless rhinoceros at that time. Now they do have a horn. This horn is made out of keratin. And there is that giant hornless rhinoceros, and that shows you how big this guy could be. There's a 6-foot person, and there's our giant rhinoceros. All right, we do also have a group that doesn't exist anymore. These guys are called brontotheres, and they exist from the Eocene to the Oligocene, and they look like that. They look sort of like a rhinoceros, but they've got a funky, different sort of horn-like thing. That's about how big these guys could grow. And then we have one of my favorite prehistoric animals, which is called the Calicothere. The Calicothere existed from the Eocene to the Pleistocene, and early people, early Homo sapiens would have coexisted with these Calicotheres. Now, they actually have claws instead of hooves, and this is what they would look like. And this is why I like Calicotheres so much, because, I don't know, it's like, is it a horse? Is it a gorilla? What the heck is it? It does have these claws, probably for digging and pulling on branches, and I just think they're adorably weird. I'd like to ride one of those and have it as a pet. I think that would be fun. But anyway, that's a Calicothere. And that's about how big Calicothere could get. So let's move to our other group of ungulates, which are the artiodactyls. And these guys are earliest known in the Eocene. And one group that's important is the oreodonts. And these guys existed in the Eocene to the Miocene, and they are related to camels. And that's what they'd look like. You can see the size of them. These guys were not very big, and they were an important prey animal of their time period. Now, we also, in this group, have the entelodonts. And these guys are Eocene to Miocene, and for a long time, paleontologists would group these guys into, they'd say they're related to pigs. And you'll see when I show you a picture of this, that they look very much like kind of pigs do, so they're like, hey, let's stick them in with the pig group. But some recent research suggests that they might be more related to hippos and cetaceans, which are whales. And yes, hippos and whales are actually related to each other. And it looks like these guys, this research suggests these might be in that group with them. Now, they are omnivores, so they are not solely herbivores. And when you look at the wear on their teeth, it actually suggests that they probably preferred meat. So in that case, they're kind of like me. I'll eat my veggies if I have to, but damn, I much prefer that nice steak. And this is what they look like. They're kind of vicious looking things. And just to give you an idea of how big they could be, there you go. There's our 6-foot person with this like terror pig thing going on there. All right, but what about some of the other groups that we have? Well, we have the hippos, which, as I said, they are related to whales, interestingly. We have our pigs in this group as well, and I think living here in Texas, we all probably know plenty about pigs and how they live. That's not something about Texans, it's something about the feral pig problem here, guys. But what about camels and llamas? They're another interesting group here. They evolved, they're again a North American group, and then they migrate to South America and to Asia and throughout the world. They evolve in the Eocene. And then we have the ruminants. Ruminants are cud chewers. So basically what happens, they have this multi-chambered stomach that helps them digest difficult to digest vegetation. And so they'll like eat some of this vegetation, it'll start to get digested, and then they'll kind of like barf it back up and chew it a little bit more. That's chewing the cud. And then they'll swallow it down again. It'll go through this complex multi-chambered stomach to extract as many nutrients as possible from that. These guys show up in the Oligocene. They are still around today. And the three main groups that we care about in this class, we have the bovids. That's basically cows. They evolved in the Miocene. We have the giraffe, and they evolved from deer in the Miocene. So giraffes are actually related to deer. And then deer are show up originally in the Oligocene, and of course we do still have them today. And a great deer that once lived, this actually is the Irish elk, and this coexisted with humans in the last ice age, and that is a type of deer. And that's how big it would get compared to a person. So that is, I wouldn't mind going on a hunting trip for that, and I bet that would give us some nice venison. All right, elephants, proboscideans. Proboscideans are beautiful animals. They're very interesting, and they have a trunk and tusks. That's what's characteristic of these guys. The earliest ones we know about are in the Eocene, about 55 million years ago. And for a while in the Mesozoic, not Mesozoic, I'm sorry, in the Cenozoic, especially in like the Miocene, we get a lot of what I call the experimental elephants. There's these various different groups that would have different shaped tusks, in some would face backwards and some would be shovel-like and all kinds of, it's almost like the elephants were like experimenting what tusk configuration was best. Today, of course, we just have African and Asian elephants left, but at one time this was quite a diverse and interesting group. So anyway, we have in the Miocene to the very early Pleistocene a group called the Dinotheres, and this has backwards tusks, like this. And that's how big this guy could grow. But then we also have that came out wrong, Amoebelodon. And this guy existed in the Pliocene, and he had shovel-like tusks. So we have this trunk, and there's these shovel-like tusks. But then we have the ones people are much more familiar with. The fuzzy ones that existed in the last ice age. And one is the mastodon. Now, the mastodon has cusp teeth for eating leaves and twigs. It likes to live in the forest. And it has straight tusks. And don't mistake your mastodon for your woolly mammoth. Mammoths have ridged teeth. They have a different shaped tooth. And that's for eating grasses, because these guys prefer to occupy some of those grassland areas. And this guy has curved tusks and tended to be bigger than your mastodon. So if we had a look at both of these, there's our mastodon, right? The tusks are not curving as much. Its head, by the way, is kind of flatter, and I'll show you their teeth in just a moment. This is the mammoth. Mammoths usually have like this big knob on their head, and these teeth, or not teeth, these tusks that curve significantly. And there's the tooth difference. That's a mastodon tooth. Those are the cusps that we're seeing. There's the mammoth tooth with the ridges for eating grasses. And so once you learn how to look for those characteristics, it's easy to see the difference between the mastodon and the mammoths. Mastodons tended to hang out a little more in forested areas. Mammoths preferred the grasslands.